Wells Fargo actually has a manual for how to screw customers? I mean, there's just stuff laying all over the ground here for you to go off on. What?
Well, the Wells Fargo case I thought was extremely interesting to me because I've been working these cases for so long against the various banks for all types of schemes. I recall I put together a short list of the stories that we've done on Ring of Fire and that you've done these stories on Wall Street bankers. Just a quick list, a fraction of the stories. Bank of America for fraud was hit for $9.3 billion for stealing, for lying to Fannie Mae, basically. You had Citigroup, $590 million also hit for fraud because they were selling toxic subprime debt that they knew was toxic and they knew it was all a lie. JP Morgan hit for $150 million in fraud for the very same thing. Bank of America, another case, hit for $137 million for fraud. They had to confess to being criminals. They had to confess to being an admitted felon. Goldman Sachs Group hit for $60 million also for fraud. HSBC, $1.9 billion for laundering money for drug cartels and terrorists. And you know what all of them have in common is nobody went to jail. And the same thing will happen. This Wells Fargo case is deplorable. They had a handbook that basically told the lawyers working for Wells Fargo, first of all, I have real problems with the caliber of lawyer that would do this, but they seem to be able to hire them by the dozens, by the hundreds. They had a handbook for that lawyer that told the lawyer how to phony up and make up a claim by just creating signatures, by signing off on signatures and saying that this is a signature of the person who signed the mortgage. Now, the reason they did that is because they were trying to foreclose on people's homes. In order to foreclose, they had to have this document signed. It had to be attached with very specific kinds of documents. And you know what, Tom? It all had to happen within 90 days. All this was supposed to be put together within 90 days from the time that the mortgage closed. Now, they knew they couldn't do that because the mortgages had been bundled up in things called toxic derivatives, and they were sold all over the country, so nobody knew where the mortgage was, nobody had the signature, nobody could even prove that Wells Fargo owned the bank, so they just made stuff up. And they forged signatures, they created documents out of thin air, and then at the end of the game, they kicked people out of their houses based on fraud.
And the signatures, my understanding of this, Pap, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the signatures that had to be on these documents, or the documents themselves that had to exist and be signed, were documents that were part of the initial closing process when the person bought the house.
That's right. That's right. And if it
So why are we not seeing law firms on TV right now? I mean, last night I was watching TV and I saw an ad for a local law firm that said, "Are you taking testosterone? And if you are taking testosterone and you have had a stroke or a heart attack or a loved one of yours is taking testosterone and has died, you may be entitled to compensation. Call the so-and-so law firm, and here's their phone number." Why am I not seeing ads like that on TV that start out by saying, have you had your home foreclosed on by your bank? If you have, then call this number because we may be able to sue these bastards.
This litigation really takes on the form more of a class action, Tom. It means that what you have is you have a claim that's common to a lot of different people. And here's the commonality. The commonality is that this company, Wells Fargo, phonied up these documents. They knew they were lying. They instructed their lawyers to lie. They instructed their lawyers to sign off on documents that were a lie. And the results were, because of that lie, people were kicked out of their home. Now, that's a class action kind of, it's very difficult to take these cases one at a time, okay? So what you'll see, potentially you could, there's no question.
And there's not large money involved like there is if somebody dies or has a stroke.
It's not, no. It's not that it's not a business decision. The business decision is this. The business decision for a lawyer is, you have somebody who was kicked out of their home based on a fraudulent document, and because they were kicked out of their home, the defense of statute of limitations. In other words, if this all had to be done within 90 days, and in fact it was done 2 years later, the defense of we own your home, you owe us money is waived. It's just like a statute of limitation. So if they owed $150,000 on their home, the argument could be made that they gained $150,000. But the point is, from a standpoint of you typically see these cases form up by way of a class action, and where you have all of the discovery that takes place by one committee of attorneys. That committee of attorneys determines the disgusting conduct of this particular company affects all of these people.
Why is it not possible, and please forgive my ignorance on this, but why is it not possible that if X number of people, and let's assume it's millions of people, during the period from when Phil Gramm got the Commodity Futures Modernization Act passed in I think 99 or 2000, and that made most of the stuff possible, and Graham Leach Bliley, there was this period of 7 or 8 years where, and not just banks, but these local businesses, loan originators, were selling mortgages to people that on their face were fraudulent. And now people find themselves, somebody's got a $30,000 mortgage, somebody else has a $300,000 mortgage. Why not just say, if you have a mortgage and it was one of these phony baloney mortgages where they were just trying to get as many as they could so that they could tranche them together, so that they could bundle them together and turn them into, the derivatives and make billions of dollars off millions of dollars worth of assets, that you don't owe that money anymore. You are, a jubilee, basically. You are free and clear. You own your home.
There are a couple of those cases winding through the courts right now. The problem is the courts have been the courts have been over backwards, Tom.
On behalf of the banks.
On behalf of the banks, there's no question. This particular case that you're talking about, this Wells Fargo case, is brought in a horrible jurisdiction. It's going to be the Northern District there in New York. Historically, they always line up with Wall Street, with banks, and that's just a product of the fact that we've been asleep at the wheel as progressives, and we've allowed the Republicans to pack the courts to the point to where you have at this point it's well over 70% of the courts are packed with corporate leaning, very conservative Republican judges. And so it's been a real slog for the lawyers who have gone forward with those types of theories that you're talking about. It's been very difficult. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, the only people who've really accomplished anything is the government, because the government says all you have to do is pay us money and these 10 people won't go to jail. Basically, they simply say either pay us the money or we're going to throw you in jail.
Right.
And so
but that doesn't help the homeowner. That's the government certified.
Matter of fact, the settlements that the government has entered with these companies helps the homeowner almost zero most of the time.
This is a tragedy.
So it's a terrible tragedy, and it's a combination of packed courts and the unwillingness for an attorney to say, I can't do the impossible in front of this judge or that judge.